I think on reflection it would have been good to have known a bit more about the variety of roles and positions. Thought more about the use of basic skills as well. I think you tend to take advantage of just key IT skills, key communication skills, whether that's written or verbal. Those things are so integral and important to any kind of work within the sector, as in most.
I would say I wish I thought more about the career choice I wanted to make and the kind of job I wanted to go into and the different roles you can get within a charity. I think I was very focused on the fact that I wanted to work for a charity and hadn't given much thought as to whether I wanted to work in programmes or fundraising or HR.
For graduates looking for jobs in the charity sector, I would really advise getting some work experience or getting involved in an internship. And I would say that it's not a case of having to do an internship full time, meaning that you have to fund yourself. A lot of places, a lot of charities and organisations give you the options of just working 2 or 3 days a week, which means that you're able to find a part-time job the rest of the time and fund your internship that way. So it is possible, even if you're not still living with your parents or anything like that.
I would say that internships with small charities are really invaluable because you often get to head up your own project or be part of a particular project. It gives you a lot more responsibility and a lot more flexibility in the work that you're doing. You also get to be involved a lot more in larger organisational things such as meetings on fundraising, on programmes, on innovation, so you really get to see how the charity functions and how it works and how fundraising ties in with programmes. I think an internship in any area is useful. I don't think people should be too focused on wanting an internship in specifically what they want a job in. I would say if you struggle finding an internship, it's good to get a job with other transferable skills. So, for example, using databases, using Outlook, using Excel, using the whole Microsoft packages, having people skills. I think anything that could be transferred across into the sector is very useful.
I think if you're looking at getting into something like project or programme management, one of the key things is actually having language, a second language, and experience working overseas. I think one of the things that you need to be aware of when you're a graduate is jumping into more studies. I think when people kind of end up realising that there's actually quite a lot of people with more experience than just undergraduate level, the first thing you think about is, oh, well, maybe I should do an MA. And I'd really recommend waiting and actually trying to look at what voluntary experience you could get. And if you are going to pursue further studies, which is really ultimately essential to differentiate yourself in the sector, you want to actually do something more specific than just international development. So whether it's something on education studies or something looking at agriculture, it's much more useful and valuable for people if you have those specific skills. So. While looking at the sort of project route, I think the most important thing is probably having the overseas and language experience. an MA can come. It's definitely useful because there are so many people wanting to get into the sector. But I think it's probably more important to have that sort of exposure to other countries, and to have worked with NGOs overseas, or if you're lucky enough to get placements with someone like the UNDP, you know, then that can definitely help differentiate you probably more than a generic MA. But at the same time, I think it's worth exploring both options and looking at, you know, what it is that suits you and where you are in your life at this point in time.
First of all, the competition is tough. There are probably a few hundred applicants for each available position, and a lot of people tend to drop out along the way. So I think in order to try and combat that, you have to try and build up your experience early. I know, for example, that we've got a number of interns that come in and start trying to build up experience even while they're doing their degrees, so they come and do the work here during their summer holidays, and they're already thinking about what experience they need in order to get that first job. I think the other thing is to work out what people are looking for. So make sure that you've got the right types of experience, and you can do that by looking at current job descriptions. So you can quite easily go onto the Bond website or onto the Guardian jobs, or look at Third Sector and look at the types of jobs that you would be interested in doing. Look down the job descriptions and pick up the things that within the person spec that they're looking for. And that often there'll be things like having experience of having managed grant processes, having understood what it's like to work with partners, having built up some experience overseas, and then you can start ticking them off the list. If an organisation is doing recruitment well, then it will it'll almost have its own list, and you'll score on each one of those particular criteria. If you go into into an application process having ticked off most of the things on the list, then you've got a much higher chance of being called for an interview, and then of course you'll be able to talk about your experiences when you're there too. It also shows that you're committed to the sector, and given the amount of competition that there is, you want to show that you're more committed to it than everyone else. I think I don't want to make it sound that it's too difficult to get into the sector as well. It is very possible, and there are lots of people who do manage to make it in. I think it's just a bit of perseverance, and I think in these difficult economic times, you'll find that people are coming in with more experience than they used to. I, for example, volunteered as an intern for 6 months. Generally, you're tending to find people who are actually making it into paid employment in the sector these days with 12 to 15 months worth of experience. There's a slight difference as time has gone on. The first thing is to make it easy. As I said, there are lots of people that are looking for these jobs. You can have anything from between 30 to hundreds of applications. If you're spending 2 minutes on each application and there are 200 of them, it's going to take you days to look through those applications. If you're talking about senior level staff, then they're not going to want to spend that amount of time. They might literally have a casting glance over your application in order to see whether you hit those key criteria. If you don't hit those things early and make it clear to people that you've got the right person spec, then your application is going to get dumped very early before it even gets time for greater scrutiny. So make it really clear to the person that you're, or to the organisation that you're applying to, that you've got the right things for that organisation. I'm looking for an employee generally with the right values. So somebody who believes in the work that the organisation is doing, is going to uphold the values of the organisation whenever they're doing the work. That has to be combined with a talent and a desire and willingness to learn. I think there's, you can have a huge amount of, I suppose, commitment to an organisation, but actually we need people who are going to do the work very well and go on to progress to be, I suppose, people who can help make the sector a better place. There are a lot of other options for approaching the sector. Internships, which I think we've spoken about a lot in these videos, is just one of those routes. You'll still find plenty of opportunities to take on temp work to get into the sector. So you might find opportunities to just do short stints with organisations. The more organisations you have on your CV, the more likelihood you have of getting that first full-time paid job. I think the other thing to think about is whether you're able to use some transferable skills. So, for example, when we're fundraising from companies, you'll find lots of people who will move across from having come from a corporate sector to become corporate fundraisers in the charity sector. So there are other opportunities to use some transferable skills to move across into the development sector. I think it's also worth thinking about the skills that are absolutely vital that people don't think so much about. So, for example, I think the sector's generally quite short of people with really good finance skills. So try and build up those skills that are in fairly short supply, but absolutely vital for a well-functioning international NGO. If you're going to be working with lots of money and transferring money to partners and making sure you raise that money, then all of those people need to be able to deal with putting together profit and loss, working on cash flow, and being able to manage money effectively. I think those types of skills are just as important as somebody who's able to manage a grant programme.